limit our ability to deliver support and services that gender-based violence survivors require. Al-Shifa Hospital is no longer functioning, and across Gaza, health supplies are running dangerously low. There are reports of women having to undergo cesarean sections without anesthesia. Military strikes and operations near hospitals are jeopardizing the lives of patients and women and girls who desperately need medical care but are unable to receive it. Hospitals, health workers, and civilians must never be targets. They have special protection under international humanitarian law. When health facilities are under attack, the lives of critically ill patients and health workers and all seeking shelter at these facilities are at risk. They have nowhere safe to go. Thus far, UNFPA has managed to deliver 5 truckloads of reproductive health kits to Gaza containing pharmaceuticals, equipment, and supplies for emergency obstetric and neonatal care. This includes anesthetics for use during cesarean sections. UNFPA is distributing clean delivery kits to improve the hygienic conditions for birth wherever they may occur, as well as kits for women who have recently given birth. UNFPA also provides cash transfers to pregnant and breastfeeding women, breast cancer patients, and survivors of gender-based violence. UNFPA perseveres in providing life-saving services, yet the assistance delivered in Gaza to date is nowhere near enough to meet the tremendous needs of women and girls. Operational constraints and the fact that our own staff and most partners are directly affected by the conflict themselves severely impinges on our ability to deliver essential services. Our colleagues recount the impact of this daily trauma on their own families. One said that during her 4th evacuation, we were running without purpose, unsure where to find shelter and refuge. The sounds of bombing filled the air and dust enveloped us. In Israel, civilians are experiencing profound pain as they mourn the killing of 1,200 people in the brutal attacks of October 7th, which we once again condemn, while once again calling for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages held by Hamas. We join the Secretary General in welcoming the announcement of the recent deal regarding the release of some of the hostages, including women and children. Mr. President, UNFPA welcomes Security Council Resolution 2712 of the 15th of November, noting it calls for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses and corridors throughout Gaza to save and protect civilian lives. UNFPA has continued to call for an immediate ceasefire. In this regard, the announcement of a 4-day humanitarian pause is a welcome development, which must be used to allow for additional aid to reach those in desperate need. Indeed, more aid is urgently needed in Gaza to save lives and to stem the torrent of human suffering. Unimpeded access of humanitarian workers and of supplies, including sexual and reproductive health services, is a matter of life and death for women and girls. In line with the Emergency Relief Coordinator's 10-point plan, the continuous and sufficient flow of humanitarian assistance to all those in need, wherever they are, is essential. This is especially true for women and children. Civilians and the infrastructure they rely on, including hospitals, shelters, and schools, must be protected. We call for the protection of humanitarian workers in Gaza who risk their lives in the service of others as we mourn the loss of over 100 UNRWA colleagues and scores of aid workers killed in the conflict. UNFPA reiterates the Secretary General's call for international humanitarian law and international humanitarian rights law to be upheld by all parties, and for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, who include women and girls. On this International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which begins 16 days to orange the world against gender-based violence, UNFPA denounces, in the strongest possible terms, all acts of violence against women and girls, including sexual violence, whenever and wherever they occur. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, the violence must end. The fate of humanity does not belong in the hands of those wielding weapons. It rests with women and young people and allies standing together, waging peace. In this urgent test of humanity, women and girls desperately need peace to prevail. I call upon the Security Council to do everything in your power to make that peace happen.
I thank Ms. Kanam for her briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the UAE.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Executive Director Bahous, Executive Director Russell, and Executive Director Kanam for their painful briefings. They highlight the critical turning point we have reached in Israel's 47-day war on Gaza that followed the October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel, and the grave choices that lie before Israel in its prosecution of this war. Just for the sense of scale, this war is taking place in a small yet highly populated area. Its largest city, Gaza City, is more densely populated than New York. This tiny area is home to families who have spent decades trying to build normal lives as a community despite repeated wars and displacement and amidst an ongoing blockade. Within this 25-mile-long strip, 12,000 locations have already been subjected to airstrikes, according to the Israeli government. This includes